Monday, April 15. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. The government today signed 2 financing agreements with the European Union, the EU, totaling $3 billion, specifically to fund the Public Financial Management Reform Program and improve forestry management in Jamaica. The EU is providing $2.3 billion to finance the improvement of forestry management and $509.1 million to fund the Public Financial Management Reform Program. Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith signed the agreements on behalf of the government, while the EU's chief negotiator on the new ACP-EU partnership and commissioner in charge of the international cooperation and development in the European Commission, Neven Mimika, signed and handed over the first disbursements of $279 million and $132.5 million for forestry management and public financial management reform, respectively. The event took place at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel in New Kingston. The government has warned stakeholders in the tourism ministry that the days of employing workers on short contracts in hotels are numbered. The tourism sector, which raked in some US $3.3 billion from the 4.3 million visitors welcomed to Jamaica's shores last year, directly employs approximately 120,000 people. However, Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett said the business of short contract arrangements has to give way to a more sustainable arrangement. He was speaking during the groundbreaking ceremony for the amateur resort in Trelawney on the weekend. Prime Minister Andrew Holness, who was the keynote speaker, said the government and the Jamaica Labour Party have been engaged in discussions about the situation.
And I want to therefore endorse the comments of the Minister of Tourism that this government is about equitable and inclusive development where the people benefit from the development. And Minister, please speak about it more so that the workers can understand that the government is looking out for their best interest.
The Prime Minister urged Bartlett to speak about it more so that, quote, workers can understand that the government is looking out for their best interest, end quote. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says he's moving to challenge the institutional way of thinking and the current bureaucracy in government, which are hindrances to the country's growth prospects.
Public bureaucracy does not always understand or indeed is empathetic to the speed of business. They operate on 2 different schedules, 2 different timelines, and they take into consideration non-commercial things that sometimes adds a burden which is not just frustration but real costs to doing business. The effect of it is that our economy doesn't grow. The effect of it is that we see the malaise and blight that takes over our society whilst people sit down and say, we are doing it strictly by the book. A book that is outdated. A book that they don't print anymore. A book that does not apply to modern day business. A book that is going to keep us poor.
The Prime Minister says a change is needed to attract greater investment. The Prime Minister was speaking on Friday at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Amatera Group's hotel project in Stewart Castle, Trelawney. News that the British government will not be placing a cap on Windrush payments was welcomed in the Senate on Friday. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, said the ministry was pleased to note
that while the public announcements indicated that the compensation was valued at £200 million, the British government has confirmed that there will be no cap on the amounts which will ultimately be paid out to individuals. The government of Jamaica has remained consistent in its position since the crisis unfolded a year ago that the victims of the Windrush immigration debacle should be afforded fair, just, and adequate compensation for damages incurred over the many years. Mindful of the significant contribution of this special category of migrants, including their contribution to the post-war reconstruction efforts in Britain, it was imperative that their right of residence in and citizenship of the country they had called home for over 50 years be urgently and appropriately resolved, including the granting of citizenship and compensatory relief. Mr. President, we took special interest, therefore, and actively participated in the consultations undertaken by the task force established by the British government last year, sharing our views on how the scheme could be established and areas to be considered for compensation.
Senator Johnson Smith also welcomed the provision of information on the British Home Office's website, which outlines the scope and parameters of the compensation scheme, and encouraged individuals who have been affected to submit their claims.
The scheme will provide for the granting of citizenship to those affected, the waiving of fees and charges for the Windrush generation and their families in relation to their return to the United Kingdom. And this is only reasonable in a context where retirees would have been obliged to return to their home countries and then would have had to pay certain charges for documentation required for re-entry. The free citizenship offer will apply not only to Caribbean migrants to the UK between 1948 and 1973, but also to persons from Commonwealth countries who settled in the UK during that time frame.
Recently, the British government has established a scheme to compensate members of the Windrush generation who were unable to prove their right to live in the United Kingdom. The compensation scheme was announced in London by Home Secretary Sajid Javid. Currently, the top 3 markets for the sale of Jamaica's Blue Mountain coffee is Japan, the United States, and Europe. To that end, at least 9 Jamaican coffee outfits are now in Boston for the annual Specialty Coffee Association's exhibition.
We'll be having a Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee booth. It's the first time in 25 years we would be doing this, where we are tasting Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee and we are saying Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee to the world. We intend as well to do a show in Europe in June as a part of the road show taking Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee to the world. And in September, we'll be in Japan, and in November, we'll be in China. So we want to really commend JamPro for coming on board, yes? Because it is a part of the aggressive strategy to take the brand Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee to the world, to our 25 million consumers of coffee in general across the globe.
The attendance at the Specialty Coffee Association exhibition is part of an aggressive strategy to diversify the geographic markets for the sale of Jamaica's Blue Mountain coffee. The 9 companies will showcase their brands of Jamaica Blue Mountain, or JBM coffee, in a single booth.
Well, on the road show, we are saying if you taste it, you will buy it. Okay, and therefore we'll be doing a lot of tastings on the floor. In Boston, this show attracts about 30,000 coffee stakeholders over the 3 days. And we think it will be a great interaction, yes, to the finest traders in the world. And so we are going to be tasting. When we go to Japan, we're going to be engaging again in tasting and sampling, because that is also a part of the strategy to engage the consumers to really understand that Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee is the finest. Its taste, its balance, its acidity. It is indeed the best coffee in the world. And we say that once we tell you about it, where the coffee is grown, in regions specified by law, in the parishes of St. Andrew, St. Thomas, and Portland, between an altitude of 2,000 feet and 5,000 feet, beautiful mistiness, cloud cover, great sunlight. The soil is fantastic, prepared by great people, and it's really a bundle of fantastic coffee experience in a cup. So what we're trying to do is to take that story to the world.
The thrust to diversify the markets follows a decline in export sales and price of Jamaica's Blue Mountain coffee. It's estimated that only 70% of the 235,000 boxes of coffee produced from the last crop was sold. A web portal for victims to report cyber crimes or cyber incidents will become operational by month end. Head of the Jamaica Cyber Incident Response Team, Dr. Monifia Hewling, who made the disclosure on Friday, said that her team is getting the portal ready with the domain name system being ironed out. Once completed, the portal will make it easier to report cyber incidents as well as increase the number of reports received. Dr. Hewling was participating in a panel discussion on cybersecurity held as part of a technology conference hosted by T-Tech Limited at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel in New Kingston. JCERT, which is housed in the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology, is mandated to safeguard government information technology systems against cyber threats. Health Minister Dr Christopher Tufton has said there is heightened alert at the island's airports and seaports owing to an outbreak of measles in the United States. Among one of the most infectious viruses in the world, the aggressiveness of the disease forced authorities in New York City on Wednesday to declare a state of emergency, requiring persons exposed to be vaccinated immediately. Preliminary reports show that some 465 people have been infected in the USA since the start of the year, the second largest number of cases since measles was eliminated in the year 2000. Public health and global health is only possible through collaboration and partnership, so says Health Minister Dr Christopher Tufton. He spoke the words at the recent handing over of some $500,000 worth of equipment at the Kingston Public Hospital. In addition to the donation, a group of ophthalmologists will be working with the KPH staff to treat 500 eye care patients for a month. The 50-member strong Bright Journey Medical Mission team has completed almost 200 cataract surgeries in the first week and a half of the mission. Head of the Department of Ophthalmology at the Kingston Public Hospital, Dr. Angela Mattis, is reporting that just over 50% of patients screened have been deemed fit to have the procedure done. She explained for the other persons who did not qualify for surgery didn't do so due to related conditions or illnesses that were not under control.
Unfortunately, some of the patients in this mission have not been selected. Their A1C is too high, and the A1C is a marker for your control of diabetes, and if it is too high, we're not going to do the surgery. The Chinese mission is not going to do the surgery. We are not going to do the surgery. You have to get your A1C down because it speaks to complications that can occur if the surgery is performed with a very high A1C count.
The Bright Journey Medical Mission first visited Jamaica in 2015. Speaking at the launch of the 2019 mission, Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton said Jamaicans can expect more collaboration such as this one. He noted the challenges posed in the treatment of illnesses related to non-communicable diseases.
For those 20 years of age or over in Jamaica, we're looking at some 11.5% or almost 230,000 persons who are living with diabetes. All of these persons need retina screening in order to identify and treat those that are at risk of visual loss. And this clearly requires a plan that is deliberate and resources to be allocated to dealing with this issue. Now, I'm the first to admit, because I am not the type of person to make everything look rosy when we have challenges. And we have challenges in public health, which is why partnerships of this type must be valued and encouraged so we can work with others to overcome these challenges.
The Bright Journey medical mission is part of a commitment made by Chinese President Xi Jinping to CARICOM leaders in 2013 to expand public health cooperation in Caribbean countries. The People's National Party is expected to reappoint Damien Crawford to the Senate. The decision, made by the party's National Executive Council, was disclosed at a meeting at the University of the West Indies over the weekend. Crawford resigned from the upper house last month to contest the April 4 by-election in Portland Eastern. He was defeated by the governing Jamaica Labour Party's Anne-Marie Vaz by some 300 votes. At the same time, PMP caretaker for West Central St. James, Dr. Andre Horton, is expected to replace Noel Slowly in the Senate. Economist Dr. Andre Horton is anxious to take up his new role as senator in the upper house of Parliament, as Slowly tendered his resignation recently. The Office of the Political Ombudsman has officially launched its website, which offers various features to encourage greater public engagement with the office. The website adds to the entity's already existing online presence on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Visitors to the www.opo.gov.jm will be able to get news, notices and alerts, information about political code of conduct signings, elections and pieces of legislation. In regional news, the United Nations Security Council on Friday decided to shut down a police mission in Haiti and replace it with a smaller UN political presence, even as it admitted that the poor Caribbean country faces major problems. The 1,000-strong UN police force, known as MINUST, was deployed in 2017, replacing the full-fledged MINUSTA peacekeeping mission, which was sent after a devastating 2010 earthquake. The group will be gradually drawn down over the coming months and end on October 15. And that's according to a U.S. drafted resolution that the Council adopted on Friday. And in other regional news, in Trinidad and Tobago, Police Commissioner Gary Griffith is urging the government to proceed cautiously as they offer social status to Venezuelans fleeing the turmoil in their country. Last Thursday, National Security Minister Stuart Young announced the creation of a registration system which will open for a 2-week period from May 31 to June 14. This will allow Venezuelans to live and work in the Tun Island Republic. But the top cop is warning that criminals could use the opportunity to enter the country.
Based on law enforcement intelligence, any individual who is here as an illegal immigrant and has been given an amnesty, based on suspicion, based on intelligence of that individual being involved in any questionable activity and that individual is red flagged, that they be immediately deported. The reason I'm saying this is as much as they will have all of the persons who would love to state that Jesus was a refugee and that we need to embrace everyone, the fact is I need to look after the well-being and interests of the Trinidad and Tobago citizens.
Guyana's opposition leader, Bharat Jagdeo, is voicing concern over CARICOM's position on the Venezuela crisis. He was speaking recently on CMC's morning program.
His president believes CARICOM could have adopted a position similar to that of the African Union, namely that neighboring countries cannot be indifferent in the wake of the collapse of democracy in any given state. According to Mr. Jagdeo, the democratic order and constitutional institutions in Venezuela have been ruptured and are under serious threat, a reality that cannot be ignored, and a position of non-interference is untenable.
Issues of freedom, democracy, human rights are universal principles that we have to all defend. And whenever they are violated in any country, no government or any other force that violates these sacred principles should use non-interference as an excuse to continue harming people's interests.
In St. Lucia, Public Service Minister Dr. Raymond has been sent on leave as the government launches an investigation into recent information being circulated in the public domain. A statement issued by the Office of the Attorney General promised that, quote, at conclusion of these investigations, the outcome will be presented to the general public, end quote. Earlier, the Prime Minister, Alan Chastanet, denied reports that Raymond had tendered his resignation amidst media reports that the minister was at the center of a salacious conversation that had gone viral on social media.
At the end of the day, am I allowed to use evidence that was not even admissible into courts as a precursor? At the end of the day, the minister embarrassed himself and he embarrassed his family. I have to... Government to some extent. But at the end of the day, he is without sin, let him cast the first stone. Right now, you're talking about a second incident of which I don't know what all the facts are. And this is why I have said that I have remained hush and I will remain hush until we're able to determine all of the facts. But I can say to you that we're very close to getting information, and I'm hoping very soon that we'll be able to make a revelation and then a way forward on this issue.
In sports, Cricket West Indies' new selection panel says it has reached out to several senior players, including retired all-rounder Dwayne Bravo, and is hoping to have them available for future selection. This comes as CWI looks to revamp its selection policy with the aim of keeping the process free of outside interference and ultimately selecting the strongest squads possible for international assignments. Speaking at a recent media briefing, newly appointed interim chairman of selectors, Robert Haynes, says contact has already been made with the likes of Bravo and Kieran Pollard, with players indicating their desire to represent the Caribbean side. And that's the news on PBCJ. Thanks so much for watching.